Let's do our prostration. Put our hands together. Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Next, please. Dedication. So together, the unsurpassed, profound, and intricate Dharma is difficult to encounter, even over hundreds and thousands of karmas. Now I have seen and heard the Dharma. I behold and uphold what the Dharma offers. I wish to understand the true meaning of the Dhamma. Next slide. Before we begin our first lecture, I just want to invite classmates to perhaps just less than 1 minute check-in. So from the previous 2 lectures, is there any comment or any suggestions or inspirations or whatever, right? So I asked you, did you have you been thinking about this lecture series? Do you have any comment? No. Jonathan?
I found the holistic aspect very important, and even though I practice that myself already, it's a nice reminder to really think about all the different other things that you can do through physical, mental, and spiritual, how it all comes together. I think it was really good. So I've been practicing that too. Thank you.
For now, I'm just soaking in everything that is in front of me, and then I will process it as Dharma.
Thank you very much. Have you all heard about speed reading courses? Speed reading. Has anyone not heard about speed reading? Please raise your hand. If you have heard about speed reading, please raise your hand. Okay, so everybody have heard about speed reading, and speed reading is a very common skill to acquire. But have we ever heard about speed learning? No. Has anybody heard about speed learning before? No, there's no hand raised in the audience. So this is very strange. We have speed reading classes, and speed reading is a norm. Whereas speed learning, whether it's kindergarten all the way up to university, no one ever taught about speed learning. Now, speed reading is a learning process. Why isn't speed learning available? Okay, so that should be interesting to us. Today, I'm going to talk about speed learning. Now, why speed learning? What is the obstacle against speed learning? This is the obstacle, right? We don't want to hear what you say. That is solely the obstacle against speed learning. If we can remove this one obstacle, learning is actually very fast. The only reason that learning is slow is because subconsciously our ego does this. We just don't want to hear it. That is what this speed learning skill is all about. This lady putting his full hand over her ear. So if we just remind ourselves, actually we are trying to remove this obstacle. Just take our hand off our ear. Then we are on our way to speed learning. Next slide, please. Why does the lady put her hand over her ear? It is because of habit. We have a habit that resists learning. But what is, you say, no, I don't have any habit resisting learning. But think about it. We only hear what we want to hear. As illustrated on this slide here, we go into the car, we turn on the radio, we don't like to hear that song, so we switch the station, right? We only want to hear the songs, a type of music that we want to hear. Any other type of music, we switch it off. We change the station, right? This is exactly the same process that is going on when we are learning. When we hear something, some information we don't want to hear, we switch the station. Therefore, we're not learning. Alright? Same like music appreciation. I like rock and roll, classical music comes on the station, I switch the station. It's that simple. So I never get to appreciate classical music because I switch the station, because I put my hand over my ear. So that is why it is habit forming, right? If I start listening to classical every day after a few months, that's all I would love because I form a habit to that. That's called neuroplasticity. Right? The brain learns by neuroplasticity. So this is what the mechanism underlying the obstacle to learning as well as speed learning. Next slide, please. On slide number 7 then, we want to talk about the 3 sets of learning skills. To put it into practice, how can we actually implement speed learning? Now that we understand the obstacle behind it and we understand the neuroplasticity is simply habit-forming thing. So what are the concrete things we can master in this skill? So the 3 sets of learning skills. First is definition of terms. The second one is communication skill set. And the third one is our own mindset. Okay. So all what I talked about is basically the mindset part. But let us go through the fundamental and state the obvious. Alright, so first, let us focus on definition of terms. Next slide, please. So on slide number 8, so this learning skill set number 1 is defining the terms, put things into context. For example, in our survey question, we ask you, why do you want to learn Buddhism? We expect various answers to that, right? There are various motivations to the same question. And the various answer, why so many different answers? Because it depends on the definition of Buddhism. Now, we haven't really gone through lecture number 2 yet, but our AWE definition, what is Buddhism? But we did talk about who was the Buddha. And when we define Buddha, we say Buddha is an enlightened person. And therefore Buddhism is the road to enlightenment. In other words, when we ask, why do you want to learn Buddhism? And Buddhism in the AWE curriculum is defined as the enlightened person, then why do you want to learn Buddhism? The question can be paraphrased as, why do you want to learn the way to enlightenment? Right? So we substitute Buddhism by the way to enlightenment, right? So this is, remember our Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya. Dhammaya is the way to enlightenment. So once we've defined our term, then we can sit down and learn that way to enlightenment. Suppose I define Buddha as a god, then I'm sorry. The definition contradicts. That if I come to this class and I want to learn about God, no, I'm sorry, we are not talking about God here. We're talking about road to enlightenment. So definition is critical, right? What do we mean by some words, right? So that is very, very crucial, and definition is just that. So every time when we come to a definition, throughout the whole course, please pay attention to what we define, right? Otherwise, we use the same word, but in the back of my mind, the same word means something else. And then the receiver, back of her mind, the same word means something entirely different. So there's no way we can learn or communicate to one another. So pay attention to definition. So I'm stating the obvious, right? In other words, black, we have to define black. White, we have to define white. And so on, before we can clearly communicate. Next slide, please. Slide number 9. These are some of the terms that define the context of our conversation. I've already using the term Buddha as an example, an enlightened person, not a god, not some deity of supernatural power. He might be a deity of supernatural power, but as far as our definition is concerned, We are simply talking about the enlightened aspect of this human being. Alright? We're putting aside all the other supernatural power on the side. Right? That is why, remember, in the very first class, we had one classmate who come in and she said, I have supernatural power. Therefore, I don't want to stay in your class. That is fine, because our definitions of Buddhism is different, right? She's in the wrong class. If you want to study supernatural power, this is the wrong class for that. So, definition is that important. Otherwise, we'll just talking cross purposes and we'll be in conflict constantly. Buddha. Next term, nirvana. What is nirvana? For some people, nirvana is sitting in a lotus position with light shining everywhere and, flowers smell, maybe angels singing, blowing the trumpet. Maybe they define nirvana that way. Right? Other people, other schools, other traditions of Buddhism would define nirvana differently. So in other words, it's again very, very critical to define these terms. Bodhisattva, Zen, metaphysics, Tathagata, all these terms are very critical in terms of when we go through this whole course of AWE curriculum. So next slide. The next point, we want to talk about communication skill set. Alright, so the first skill set is definition of terms. The second skill set is communication skill set. And in the second category, when we talk about communication, there are actually four of them. The first is active listening. The second is appreciation. The third is expression. And the fourth one is establishing collective consciousness. So just for everybody to remember these 4 points easily, I've arranged it so that it's A, A, E, E. Okay? 2 A's and 2 E's. So now, we'll go to the next slide, slide number 12. Active listening. Okay? So what is active listening? Well, active listening is when we listen, we don't criticize at the back of our head first. We just listen. Never mind what it's saying is right or wrong, good or bad. Don't judge, in other words. And the second point is, don't try to fit the new information into some existing silo that we have already preformed in our head. Because we all have previous learning experience and we have already formed certain patterns of thinking. If the old information comes in that fits our old pattern of thinking, it's old information that fits comfortably, therefore we haven't learned anything new. Correct? When new information comes in, oh, this is something new. It doesn't fit nicely in my old pattern. That is when learning happens. It's new information. If our old silo right away resists and rejects that new information, we're not learning. The only way we can learn is do not try to fit our information into our existing pattern or silo. Okay? Any question? No? Okay. And the third point is, we accept each other's opinion. Now, we can disagree, right? Because it might not fit into that silo. But we have to respect each other's opinion. Okay, that is very simple. That's simple courtesy, right? Instead of creating conflicting internal thinking, we just respect each other. You can agree to disagree, no problem with that. The fourth one is, of course, do not interrupt. So in the middle of the sentence, of course, if we interrupt, then we're not receiving the message. So all these are active listening. So I'm basically stating the obvious, but obvious is never really that obvious. So what is all this active listening boils down to? It boils down to overcoming our ego. See, when we judge When we criticize, when we want to stay in a silo, that's an egotistical thing, right? When we judge and when we disrespect other people's opinion, that is again our ego at work. When we're interrupting, again, our ego is trying to take over. So all this active listening, although we have these 4 clear points, when we dissect it down to the nitty-gritty, the overall theme is we have to overcome our own ego for active listening. Okay? Any question on the active listening part? Okay, if not, then I'll move to the next slide, which is appreciation. On slide 13, the first point under appreciation is when we appreciate others, we are actually discovering which part of us is stubborn, right? Or we think we are right and other people are wrong. That is obstinacy. So we discover that if we appreciate others. The second point is when you appreciate, we are connecting with the speaker. Right? We're connecting. As I'm waving my hand here, I see a few classmates nodding their head. See? We are already talking, but not in words. Our body language are connecting. Right? A smile, a look at the audience, a nod, or jotting down some notes. All these are powerful body language. And psychologists study after study after study tells us body language is more than 65% of our verbal communication. That is why it's important to come to class. When we just listen to the lecture on the website, we lost over 60% of communication. Right? Because over 60% is communicated not by my talking, but by my body language. And your body language communicating and connecting with the speaker. That is so crucial. The third point then is improve the elements and factors that mold our character. That is to say, instead of saying, oh yeah, I went to listen to so-and-so talk about something and I really didn't learn anything. You say, oh yeah, I went to so-and-so. I didn't learn much. Maybe I didn't understand much, but I appreciate his or her talk. Right? That appreciation change our own character. Learning any new thing is not important. Agreeing or disagreeing with that lecture is not important. But appreciating that has changed our own character. That is what appreciation is about. It actually remolds our own character. It improves ourselves as a person when we appreciate other people. That is very powerful, appreciation. And in fact, later on, about lecture 9, I think, we're going to have a whole lesson on gratitude, which has to do with appreciation. Right? So we'll go deep into this appreciation attitude. But for now, we understand that appreciation is actually a powerful means or skill set to speech learning. So any questions so far? Okay. Then, again, it boils down to overcoming ego. Right? Discovering where we are stubborn or not, the first point is to overcome our ego. Connecting with the speaker is no longer staying within my own ego. Improving our character means overcoming our own ego. So again, the second point is fundamentally built upon the foundation of overcoming ego. Okay, now let's move to the third point. The third point is expression. After we've listened, we would like to ask questions, we would like to express ourselves. Now, the picture you see on the lower right-hand side is when we ask, would you like to express? Many of us have this phobia of public speaking. Right? No, I have nothing, no comment, nothing to say. Right? Why? Because we have certain image to maintain. that we don't want to be confrontational or be controversial, or we want to be nice and so on. And again, that boils down to an ego thing. By expressing ourselves, and it doesn't matter, again, once we learn this speed learning skill, right or wrong doesn't matter. Good or bad doesn't matter. But it's that connectivity. It's that exchange of ideas, right? So expression helps us to overcome the fear of public speaking, and this fear is real to many of us. Why are we afraid of public speaking? Besides the reason I just described, there's also the silo thing, right? Our character, our ego, mold us that, I am this character who wants to be introvert. I'm not an extrovert, right? I again. Ego again, right? And secondly, by expressing, we are contributing by giving ourselves, okay? We give ourselves to the class, giving ourselves to the group, giving ourselves to the lecture material as well, right? Enhancing it, exchange of information, exchange of body language, exchange of material, exchange of energy, exchange of life force. All these are done by expressing oneself. And learn to speak better from listening to others. In other words, we try to enhance our skill of expression, to be considerate of other people, less blunt, more polite, or find ways to express things that are much more receptive, right? Because sometimes information, when presented, the packaging of that information can be more important than the information itself. Like when we receive a present, sometimes the packaging of that present can be, whether it's pleasing or not, can sometimes override the value of the present. Same here. When we give or receive information, the packaging of that information is important. So, once again, the bottom line is we are overcoming our ego. When we try to improve our way of expression, we try to overcome the fear of public speaking, we contribute more, we learn to speak in a more amiable way. All these are overcoming our ego. And finally, establish collective consciousness. So, we absorb all the good points from the other people. That means we are learning. We minimize our own stubbornness. That means we are overcoming our ego. So what is collective consciousness? In the end, we come out recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So a class is always greater than the sum of the classmates. What that bottom right-hand slide is trying to show is that's a car. A car is made up of all those parts. Each of those parts is important, but by themselves is useless. It's only when all these different parts are put together, you have a car. You have a functional car, right? Even if missing a tiny little screw, that car will be defective. Okay? So each and every one of us coming to class plays that vital role of an important part of that car, whether you're the engine or the steering wheel or a piece of screw. That's what makes the whole thing work. So, the whole is always greater than some of its parts. And the parts are egos. In other words, those parts are just the egocentric selves. And by coming together to make up the holistic approach or the whole car, then we are growing with an open mind. And we are breaking out of our egotistic thinking box. Right? So all four things, active listening, appreciation, the two A's, expression, and established collective consciousness, the four E's, the two A's and the two E's, these four skill sets, everything has to boils down to overcoming our egocentric self. And thank goodness, in 3 lectures from now, Dr. Chen is going to give a whole lecture on the egocentric self, the ego, the I. Okay? So our curriculum is very, very tight-knit and together. Okay. Any questions so far? If not, then let us move to the final mindset. The set of learning skills, the final point is mindset. And when we talk about mindset, we mean how to open our mind. This then kickstarts our first lecture in metaphysics, which is, the title is How to Open Our Mind, and the caption to that is Beyond Infinity, How to Expand Our Thinking Bowl. Okay? Remember now, this whole lecture that Dr. Chen will deliver in the remaining of the afternoon is the third skill set of speed learning. Without mastering, without first opening our heart and mind, there's nothing we can learn because it is the third fundamental learning skill. Do you have any questions about this learning topic? Okay. Perhaps I just ask some classmates, perhaps they can practice expression. A less than 1 minute talk to just recap what you have heard about this speech.
We learned about the 2A and then 2E. To learn about speech learning. So the A, the active appreciation, and the E is the expression, and the S is the collective consciousness.
Sorry, what was the question?
Just a 1 minute recap of whatever you want to say. Yeah. Jonathan, remember you suggested the class should be more engaged.
Oh,
so the class should be more engaged.
So that's good. I guess all those aspects are very important to the speed learning. I mean, you have to have an open mind, and how it all comes together is important to adapting new ways of doing things and opening your mind. I especially like the collective consciousness because I have read books and things like that talk about that, and I'm really looking forward to understanding that particular aspect.
Let me just quickly respond to Jonathan's excellent comment. Collective consciousness will be part of our lecture. It will be in that metaphysics lecture 3, I believe, is God and Ghost Real? At that lecture, we're going into collective consciousness. And then later on, the metaphysics lecture 4 is actually talking about consciousness level, different levels of consciousness, and we'll go deeper into collective consciousness again. So yes, it's all part of the curriculum. All right, 5 minutes break, and then we'll keep going.